Hey everyone, this is the Love of Cinema podcast. We like to talk movies. If you like to talk movies too, you come to the right place.
The very next week, when Zanjeer is released, and at the end of the week one, it was declared a super hit. It was both Pran and Amitabh Bachchan equally on the cover, and it says Thespian Duo. I still remember this vividly. So, saying he was on the front page of the Trade magazine, and that same issue of this magazine, in the bottom there was an announcement saying that the Ramesh Sippy, GP they have announced a multi-starrer with Dharmendra, Sanjeev Kumar, and Amitabh Bachchan.
In a key scene from Prakash Mehra's Zanjeer, Amitabh Bachchan's Inspector Vijay Khanna lashes out at Pran's Sher Khan, the head of a local gambling syndicate. The scene takes place inside a police station. When Sher Khan tries to seat himself in Vijay's office, Vijay angrily kicks away the chair and whips out some of that now legendary snappy dialogue from the film. जब तक बैठने को कहा ना जाए, शराफत से खड़े रहो. ये पुलिस स्टेशन है, तुम्हारे बाप का घर नहीं. It's a pivotal moment in the film, setting the tone for the film's lead character. But more importantly, it's the very first of the signature Salim-Javed Bachchan moments that have a special place in the annals of Hindi cinema. Moments that would go on to shape the image of an angry young man, as portrayed by Bachchan. Bachchan, in the years to come, would ride that image to superstardom and become an overarching cultural icon, connecting with generations of audiences across the globe. This is Himanshu, and you're listening to the Love of Cinema podcast. But before moving on, an important friendly reminder. If you enjoy organic conversations centered on Indian cinema, Love of Cinema podcast was created for people just like you. So if you find value in the podcast, if it helps you in discovering new films or new facets about familiar films, do consider supporting the show. Love of Cinema podcast is my passion project, and with every episode, I've attempted to create something that cinephiles will continue to find value, not just today, but over time as well. To create something that goes beyond banter, beyond trending films. So if you find value in the conversations on the pod, please do consider supporting the show. Your support will help me continue creating content with shelf life for fans of Indian cinema everywhere. You'll find the link to support the show in the episode notes. You can also support the show directly from the podcast website. It's fast, it's easy, and your support is greatly appreciated. Independent pods like this one don't have a platform ecosystem for amplification and distribution. Independent pods rely on amplification through its listeners. So if you like the episode, please share the episode on social, as that will help other people discover the podcast. Back to today's episode. As Zanjeer turns 50 this month, I wanted to revisit the film, not only because it proved to be the breakout vehicle for Bachchan, but also because it's a milestone in Hindi cinema for various other equally significant reasons. I'm delighted to have Diptakirti Chaudhuri on the pod to talk more about the film. He has authored 7 lovely books on Hindi cinema, including one on Salim-Javed. In his own words, he does marketing by day and movies by night, dividing his time between Pune, Bangalore, and Ramgarh. Yes, you heard that right, Ramgarh. Hindi cinema has been a lifelong passion for Diptakirti, and it comes through when you hear him talking. I've included the Amazon link to his books in the episode notes. Do check them out as well. On this episode, we chatted about our favorite scenes from Zanjeer, Salim-Javed's characterization and dialogue, how Zanjeer kickstarted a trend of action dramas, the film's legacy, and how the film has been a looming influence on Indian cinema, Hindi and regional, since then, all the way right up to Satya, We also touched on other things, like the making of the film, a few interesting anecdotes, and how many of the top actors of the time passed on the film. Zanjeer at 50. Here goes. Hey, Dipto, how are you doing?
I'm fine, Himanshu. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a while now. And I knew it had to be a Bachchan film. And then, this Zanjeer is like such a landmark film when it comes to Bachchan. And also, Zanjeer is completing 50 years this year. So I thought, okay, let's do an episode on Zanjeer and let's see if Dipto wants to do that episode. I was thinking maybe we will start talking about Zanjeer by first kind of talking a little bit about what a popular Hindi cinema was like at that time, because Zanjeer is a sort of a tectonic shift in terms of trends and, and what kind of it ushered in, the era that it ushered in. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, the popular Hindi cinema of the time, late 60s, early 70s. And, I will just briefly like sum up what my understanding is, and please add to that, in detail afterwards. But
Sure.
as I understand this, late 60s, early 70s is essentially a time when musicals and love stories were still having that golden run, right? Right from, I think, probably mid 40s that run started. And that was still in process. And the roost is mainly ruled by Devanand, Dilip Kumar, and Raj Kapoor. And of course, there are others like Dharmendra, there is Rajkumar. The turn of the decade, into 70s witnesses the phenomenon of Rajesh Khanna. But by 1973, the year of Zanjeer, the Rajesh Khanna wave is perhaps past its peak. And so that's the way I'm looking at this era. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yes, it is pretty much. I'll just add on a little bit to it. I mean, Rajesh Khanna was one of those superstars who had a meteoric rise and a very short stint at the top, if you think about it, because Aradhana came in 1969. And as you rightly said, 1973, he was like, he had some 5 or 6 flops in 1972. And 1973, I think Bawarchi released in 1973 or something. But, Bawarchi was not the romantic Rajesh Khanna role. Now, one thing that I thought, I mean, when I was thinking about this conversation, when you talked about it, I realized that there were some seeds of action that were being sown just before Zanjeer, which was kind of sort of priming the ground, so to speak. So, for example, in 1970, the biggest hit of the year was Johnny Mera Naam, which had a significant action lost siblings plot. Then there was 1970 also had Jeevan Mrityu, which was again a non-action revenge plot. Then 1971 had Mera Gaon Mera Desh, which was which had a villain called Jabbar Singh, and it was a sort of a dacoit action sort of a plot. 1972 had Sita or Gita, which had a kind of a revenge plot. And later on in 1973, we had Yadav Ki Barat and Namak Haram. I think Namak Haram,
Yes.
I'm not sure, but so,
Another biggie, yeah.
Yes, all these films were kind of had seeds of either a little bit of action or a little bit of revenge or a little bit of this uh, estranged siblings or estranged children kind of plot, which all kind of came together like a sort of a perfect storm with Zanjeer.
It's interesting because if we look at Zanjeer and all the people associated with that film, I mean, they are all legends in the making at that time. Because, the story is of course, by Salim-Javed. And Salim-Javed are still in their early days. They have had hits in Andaz, Sita Aur Gita, and I believe they also had Hati Mere Saathi, right?
So they have,
right. So they have had hits. Prakash Mehra had done a few films before this. Hasina Maan Jayegi, I believe, and Samadhi. Were those hits?
Yeah, they were moderate hits, but I think Zanjeer was the starting point of Prakash Mehra Productions because he gained a bit of confidence. They were moderate successes, and So this was I think the first film in which he produced. He decided he had a trump card, which was the script actually, not the actor, a trump card which he could bet on. Now, I'm not sure whether it was a compulsion of his finances that he chose to take such an unconventional script, or what was it really, or he wanted to take a really big punt as opposed to. It could be that he could not afford Rajesh Khanna. That could be the uncharitable explanation, or the charitable explanation could be he thought this is let's play with something very different and very radical.
But this movie, Dipto, never went to Rajesh Khanna, right? It went to Dharmendra, it went to Dilip Kumar, it went to Devanand, it went to Rajkumar,
Yes.
but not Rajesh Khanna, right?
No, not Rajesh Khanna. It pretty much went to everybody every top star there, and everybody refused it for the craziest of reasons. Because uh, Dilip Kumar, I must be honest, I cannot picture Dilip Kumar in this role. I mean, much as I admire his acting, I just cannot see him doing this kind of action. But Dilip Kumar refused because he felt that there was, quote unquote, no scope for performance. He felt that he needed some of those meaty dialogue oriented or whatever emotional or whatever scenes that he would choose out of it. He did not get that, and he many years later he told Salim Khan that he really regretted dropping two films. One was Pyasa and one was Zanjeer.
I've heard that. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I was listening to a Salim Khan interview, and this is one thing that he mentioned. Like you said, Dilip Kumar did regret not doing Janjeer. And the other thing that Salim Khan said in that interview was that, he said, I wrote a story where the hero doesn't sing. And he said that it's quite a radical idea for the time, but, he wanted to do something different. And he had this idea of modeling the hero after the angry young man trope from theater. And
That's right.
So that was kind of the germ of Janjeer, as Salim Khan said in that interview. Like you said, I think you already mentioned that, yes, Prakash Mehra liked the script and decides to not only direct it, but also venture into production with the story. So how does it go in the laps of Mr. Bachchan?
Yeah, so I think I wrote this somewhere that at that point in time, Amitabh Bachchan was the biggest flop actor in the history of Bollywood. And my grandmother really liked him. I mean, she saw her picture in some of the old Stardust or something, and she said, "Oh, what a man! I wish I have a son-in-law like this." So I keep telling everyone that at that point in time, Amitabh Bachchan had three fans in India: my grandmother and Salim Khan and Javed Akhtar. Because it's a very interesting story that Javed Akhtar and Salim Khan saw him in Bombay to Goa. And there is this scene, I think you remember, in which Bachchan is hit. He falls down and he's chewing gum. And when he gets up, he's still chewing gum. So it's like
That's some swag, yes.
Yeah, so it's like serious swag. So I think one of the two, Salim Saab or Javed Saab, had said, we were really impressed by this. And Javed Saab had said that we never figured out that why the industry couldn't see what we were seeing, that Amitabh Bachchan is an amazing actor. I mean, he is an actor like no other. So they basically, Prakash Mehra used to go to Devanand and come back, and they used to say, "Hey, why don't you take Amitabh Bachchan?" He used to go to Rajkumar and come back, and they said, "Hey, why don't you take Amitabh Bachchan?" So essentially, Prakash Mehra wanted a star. Who could fit the bill. And I mean, in the limitations of the stardom, I think everybody could have done the role in some way. Though I cannot, as I said, I cannot imagine anybody else in the role. But I think anybody could have done that role. So eventually, it became like nobody is left kind of a thing. So I think there was a film called Pyar Ki Kahani, one of the very few Bachchan films that I haven't seen. He was shooting for that somewhere. And Salim Javed took Prakash Mehra to meet him there. And they kind of hit it off, and have the cliche, and the rest was history.
And it's also interesting if we think about Prakash Mehra, because the kind of films that Prakash Mehra did afterwards, like with the possible exception of Mukaddar Ka Sikandar, his forte always seemed to me like more like comedy and stuff that's in that neighborhood more than action. So although Khoon Pasina is his production, he also kind of ghost directed that movie, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
So Khoon Pasina is a great movie. I love that movie, and the action in Khoon Pasina and the raw energy there again is something that's phenomenal. But it's interesting because after Zanjeer, if you look at the movies that Prakash Mehra did, Mukaddar Ka Sikandar, absolutely bona fide, classic. But it never feels like he was a person, who would go after like an action script, or he was an action fan, actively seeking an action script or anything like that. So it's interesting, why Prakash Mehra was so sold on the script. And, like you said, maybe he wanted to do something different, and he probably, wanted to try out action, because we'll talk about this later, because Zanjeer not only ushers in the Bachchan era, but also the action drama era, right, of the 70s.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned Yadon Ki Barat, another absolutely landmark film. So that's the same year. Was Zanjeer came before Yadon Ki Barat in 73, right?
Yes, Zanjeer came in
May, I believe.
on May 73, and Yadon Ki Barat, I think, is October or November.
October or November, right.
Yeah. So there is an interesting thing that Nasir Hussain later said, that I never realized that Salim Javed had sold me the same script. Because if you think about it, a parents get killed, son sees one identifying feature of the killer and grows up to take revenge. This is the story of both Zanjeer and Yadon Ki Barat.
Dharmendra's character and Bachchan's character.
Yeah. And so but I mean, if I offhand tell anybody that, Yadon Ki Barat and Zanjeer is the same story, the default reaction would be, what rubbish. Because they are so different in mood, in milieu, in pacing, in terms of the characterization of, though Dharmendra in Yadon Ki Barat is the quintessential angry young man, the hero who doesn't sing. He's the only guy in the film who doesn't get a song.
Do we know the reason why Dharmendra rejected this film?
Yeah, so I think the script was given to Dharmendra's brother, who wanted to produce the film. And I think, so it was Dharmendra's brother was supposed to produce the film, Prakash Mehra was supposed to direct the film, something like that. And that's how Dharmendra was supposed to star in it. But because of some issues, Dharmendra's brother exited as a producer. So Dharmendra also kind of rejected. He also exited.
Got it. So Dipto, when we talk about Zanjeer, we got to talk about the genesis of the angry young man, because this is where all of it begins within the context of Hindi cinema. Like I mentioned before, the hero is modeled after the angry young man trope of a working class hero, who's dissatisfied with the social conditions and the opportunity for the young. And that's what the whole trope of angry young man is. But as we know, Salim Javed took that, and like they have so often done, that they have taken, been inspired from stuff from literature, films, Marathi theater, and they've completely made it their own by building on it and, adding characteristic stuff. Tell us a little bit more about the genesis of the angry young man and Zanjeer.
Yeah, as you said right at the beginning, that I think after 25 years of independence, there was a fair bit of dissatisfaction in the country, and this whole thing of the system winning kind of a thing was definitely pretty prevalent there. And you could see it in the Zeitgeist, right? Because there was the Naxal movement was kind of gaining momentum in Bengal. The Jayaprakash Narayan-led movement was gaining momentum in Bihar. In Maharashtra, there was a lot of issues or anger about unemployment, which kind of often manifested into the fight against outsiders, so to speak. So all these things were simmering. I mean, I think that people had enough of heroes and heroines in beautiful clothes running around trees and going off to Kashmir to sing a song. So they desperately needed a hero who didn't sing songs. I really like this line that you said right at the beginning. So again, there were murmurings. I mean, if I just go a little outside Hindi cinema, there was Pratidwandi by Satyajit Ray, which came, I
Absolutely.
think, in 1970. That's an angry young man. I mean, but it was a very futile sort of anger. He does not take on the system. I mean, his anger is very localized. It's real. I mean, it's how you would behave, and a jobless young man would behave in a very frustrating society. Gulzar's Mere Apne is again a full character, a plethora of characters who were angry men, young men who were not doing anything. So, to that extent, these things were slowly building up. These things were these were cues that was coming in. And I mean, I always see this parallel that, in Pratidwandi's last scene, I mean, in the last scene, Siddhartha, the protagonist, he barges into an interview room and he upturns a table in anger against the system, so to speak. And in Zanjeer's defining moment, our hero kicks away a chair. And when he tells Sher Khan ki jab tak baithne ko na kaha jaye and all of that. So it was a very, I mean, you can, now that in the benefit of hindsight, you can almost see it as a connected story that unfolded, started probably from the 69, 70s. As I said, that there were other action, germs of action, revenge that were coming up, and it kind of exploded in Zanjeer.
Super, super. That was super context, Dipto. Thanks for kind of stringing that together. That makes perfect sense of how things were kind of just simmering below the surface, in terms of also the movies that were being made. I was talking, maybe, we should just dive into some of the key scenes and moments from the film.
Yes.
And, I'll let you please do the honors. I have a list here, but, I'm pretty sure there might be some overlap. So why don't you start?
Yes.
What's the first scene that comes to mind when you think of Zanjeer?
Yeah, the first scene has to be that defining what I would call the angry young man arrives kind of a scene where he has that altercation with Sher Khan in the police station. There's a very interesting story where Javed Saab said, and he had gone to see the film in a theater, and he was anonymous then, so he could easily do it. And when that scene happened, the guy sitting next to him said, "Arey baap re baap." He said that this is a reaction unseen in Hindi cinema till then. You cried, you laughed, you clapped, you whistled, you sang along, you danced, you did all of that. But having this sort of a almost scared reaction that it's an unexpected thing, that was very unusual. So that's obviously the thing. What I would like to draw attention to is that just after, I mean, all the clips that you see anywhere cuts at that point where he says कि शराफत से खड़े रहो, ये तुम्हारा बाप का घर नहीं है. I mean, ये पुलिस स्टेशन है, तुम्हारा बाप का घर नहीं है. But the scene does not end there. Then Sher Khan actually has one back because, and Pran Saab, of course, was the only person who could probably take Amitabh Bachchan in his prime on. And he said कि चिल्लाओ मत साहब. He said, अपने हवलदार को बुलाओ और मुझे जेल में बंद करवा दो. He kind of challenges him. And Amitabh kind of picks up that challenge. So it was a very nice setup for the next action scene that's going to come up, which was again a high voltage fight scene. I mean, again, one of the most violent scenes of that time.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the first, just before we move on, that first confrontation between Sher Khan and Vijay Khanna is absolutely legendary. And it's vintage, Salim-Javed 70s stuff, the rawness, the energy of it. Arguably the very first iconic Salim-Javed Bachchan moment, if you will, one for the history books. I mean,
absolutely, it is.
So, and of course, like you said, Pran Saab just takes Sher Khan to another level. I mean, the comeback, like you said, after Bachchan's explosive dialogues, and just the sheer charisma and charm of that actor, of that person, is he not only
Yeah.
holds his own against Bachchan, but he's an equal there, and I mean, there's no way that, and at that point of time, obviously, Pran Saab is already a legend. His portrayal of Sher Khan is just tremendous. Deepto, my another
Yes.
favorite scene of mine is
Sorry, I must.
yes, please.
Sorry, I'll just interrupt here because I suddenly remembered. I missed something. That when I said that, how did it land in Amitabh Bachchan's lap? Even Pran Saab had a role to play because Pran Saab's, I think, younger brother used to know Amitabh Bachchan while they were both in Chennai, then Madras.
Oh,
And
okay.
Amitabh Bachchan told him that, my brother has appeared in this movie. Why don't we go and see it? And they saw Zanjeer. Pran Saab's brother called up Pran Saab and said, ki, I saw this amazing movie. I think so should you. And so Pran Saab also put in a word for Amitabh Bachchan to be taken. So it's like and I mean, of course, Pran Saab in real life is an absolute gem of a person, a total good soul. So you can always imagine him taking up cudgels for an unknown newcomer purely on the basis of talent.
Interesting nugget. I
Yeah,
didn't know that. Thanks for bringing
yeah,
that in. The other scene that I'm really fond of, Dipto, is the one where there's a confrontation between Bachchan and Ajit and Bindu at the club. you know, where Jump Back is playing in the background, and Bachchan walks straight up to the table where Ajit and Bindu are having dinner. He seats himself and straight up starts firing salvos. The
yeah.
scene's got style, it's got swag, it's got color. We'll talk more about that scene and you can add more to this scene. But I just want to say that I love how Prakash Mehra, nicely bookends that sequence when Bachchan exits from that club. He's cantering down the stairs like a badass, absolutely. And figuratively, it's like a mic drop. And it cuts then
Yeah.
next to his house, where he's going to have some unexpected visitors. But I just love that how that scene ends. But what a scene that is.
Absolutely. I think that's again one of my favorite scenes, and I love how it starts. That Amitabh Bachchan walks straight past Teja's bodyguards, and he sits down on the table uninvited, and he says, "Now this is an important one because he says कि Teja मैं आ गया हूँ," and Ajit looks up and says hello in his that typical that that very sing song but scary tone. He says hello. I think that's a very important piece because Ajit gets built up as a guy who is equally formidable. So it's not any random Johnny that Amitabh Bachchan is beating up or defeating. He's like not only is like this crime kingpin, he's also doesn't get hassled by these small time inspectors trying to honest inspectors trying to disrupt his business. So I really love that scene.
Super scene, super scene. And then the scene that follows that scene is also one of my favorites. It's that the bathroom action sequence. It's a pretty solid action scene, solid color palette game too there. And, I always joke among my friends that, a good decade before the legendary bathroom action scene from Scarface, we had a pretty solid action scene set in a bathroom.
Absolutely.
And that too with Bachchan. And
Absolutely.
again, nicely bookended by Salim-Javed's, explosive dialogues. I think Bachchan says something like, "Teja se keh do, uske do toote hue sofe mere bathroom mein pade hai."
मेरे bathroom में पड़े हैं. It is awesome because what happens is that if you see all the scenes, the fight scenes that Bachchan is part of in Zanjeer, he has an intensity which was not seen. Fight scenes were not new in Hindi cinema. Fight scenes have been happening since ages. But the way he fights Sher Khan in that scene, the way he fights these guys, you can, I mean, I remember I watched Zanjeer. I mean, I did not watch it chronologically. I saw it as a teenager. So I mean, by that time I was quite jaded in terms of watching a lot of action in regular Hindi scene and all, films and all of that. I remember I getting goosebumps. I'm saying, man, this guy is like really giving it his all. I mean, the next time I felt that thing was like in Shah Rukh Khan in Bazigar, where I again felt, oh my God, this guy is like going to either kill everybody or going to die trying. I mean, both, I think they were amazing action scenes. I mean, all of Zanjeer's scenes were action scenes, especially, were like nothing ever seen before in Hindi cinema.
Yes, yes. And the first taste of Bachchan as an action star. Yeah, the scene between Vijay and Mala at his home, I really like that scene, where he's standing by his window and he mentions to Mala that, on the other side of the window, outside the window, outside their home, there is a cruel world out there, and how most of us just choose to forget about it by, closing the curtains of our windows on our side. And I like that scene because it's not just an simmering, angry young man scene relegated to Zanjeer, but it spreads its roots to the extended, Bachchan-Salim-Javed canon as well. So, especially with Diwar and to a certain extent Kala Patthar, maybe even Trishul. And it's, it's the only one of those scenes where, we kind of get to see this interaction between the two. And correct me if I'm wrong, but she says something like, I unfortunately don't know the dialogue verbatim, but I think she says something like "Tumhare andar jwalamukhi hai" or something like that. So, again, it's like, again, tying into that whole angry young man trope.
It's a beautiful scene, and it's like Salim Javed. It's a very nicely written scene because it's all about this decor of that house, where they are staying. So they talk about curtains, and Amitabh Bachchan says that कि हम वो पर्दे बंद कर देंगे तो we will not see what's happening outside our beautiful world. And then she references later she references a painting of a very placid lake, and she says that your volcano or the lava from your inside needs to come out for a lake to kind of come there. I think it's a very important scene because it's like the time where this angry young man, who's a very unromantic sort of a character, he kind of makes himself vulnerable. He kind of shows how passionate or how angry he is with the whole system. And Mala actually is his true soulmate or whatever, because she kind of understands. I mean, she could have said, okay, now please don't get all angry and all. I mean, we have a life to lead. I mean, but that would be a cop out. I mean, not a cop out. I mean, that would be a sort of a compromise she's forcing on him. She doesn't do that. She says, you go out and take everyone out, so to speak.
Right. And it's, we'll talk about the characters and, we'll talk about the characterization in Salim Javed films. But while we are on Mala, usually Salim Javed used to write really strong women, like Shakti or even Sholay. But I just thought that Mala was perhaps a little bit underdeveloped. What do you think?
I think the genesis of Mala is very interesting because she comes across meaning she is these street side knife sharpener and all of that, right? Then she witnesses a sort of a crime, and she is scared. She is not scared into kind of not giving testimony. She is actually bribed into giving testimony, which is a very interesting thing. The people come and give her money and says that because she is a bit of a daredevil, and her lingo, she speaks in the typical Mumbaiya lingo of, ek lafa dungi and all of that. So she is this bit of a daredevil herself, but she decides not to do it partially because of fear and partially because she's been paid money. And then she kind of transforms when, again, she sees one of those, again, a brilliant scene in which Amitabh keeps pulling off the shrouds from all those dead children. And she kind of decides to give the testimony. So it's a very interesting, but yes, it is not developed as much. The character is not developed because the focus is solely on Amitabh Bachchan. And in fact, Jaya Bhaduri, when she heard the script from Salim Khan, she said that why should I do this film? There is nothing for me to do. And Salim Khan, being the blunt talker that he is, he said that there is only one reason for you to do this film, and that is Amitabh Bachchan. You are a big star. If you come into this film has a better chance of success. And at that point, they are obviously seeing each other. So it's like that. So he gave it to her flat. He said, because your boyfriend is in it. As simple as that. So yes, it is not the most, not a, let's say, Trishul, Kala Pathar, Sholay, of course, had some very strong woman characters. This is a strong character, but not as, right, as you rightly said, not as well developed.
Oh, by the way, I just realized that Abhiman is also in the 73, right?
Yes, it is.
I wonder. So that was after Zanjeer, though, right? It came out after Zanjeer?
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Yeah, I can't recall right now, but most likely.
Right. And talking about characters, Dipto, Teja, there are these little bits about characterization that Salim-Javed always, had this beautiful knack for. And when it comes to Teja, I like that one particular scene where, he's telling Bindu, how he was the one who killed his mentor, Patil. And that's very nicely done. And I was reading somewhere that, I don't know. I think it was Ajit's son who mentioned this, that Salim Khan actually took Ajit to Dawn in Bhopal because he had based Teja's character sort of on him, and he wanted Ajit to pick up the way that guy used to talk. And he was a very soft-spoken guy. So, he said that contrary to the belief that, Dons are these foul-mouthed, kind of heavy talking people, they're extremely soft mannered and soft spoken, and he wanted Ajit to get a taste of that. So I don't know if this is a true story, but I believe Ajit's son said this, so I think this is a true story.
No, I was not aware of this. It kind of makes sense because the Hindi film the Hindi film villain, I think Salim-Javed had a fantastic appreciation of that. They understood that to have a great hero, you have to have a great villain, because otherwise things just fall flat. If you just kill the neighborhood toughie or hit him slap him a few times, that's just not enough. So they took a very nice tack. If this is a way, then it adds on to this things, because how the character of Teja is written. So, for example, there is a backstory of the villain, which you are talking about, that he was a hired gun who kills Amitabh Bachchan's parents, and then he kills his own master to become the Don himself, and he springs it just like that. Because the dialogue is very interesting to the scene that you said, that Bindu in a very emotional sort of way said that, oh, you must be so fond of your mentor. And he said that, oh, yes, I killed him. It's like that. It suddenly kind of slips in that, oh, this guy is really sinister. Also, I really like this smooth way of talking. There is this scene in which one of his henchmen come and tell him ki ek police officer ne, some truck has been seized by the police, and this guy says something like, he says, so Mona obviously asked that kya hua, and he says that Kabir keh raha tha ki kisi police inspector ko paise ki zarurat hai. It is such a cynically cool and cynical way of saying that, I own the police, I will pay and get my trucks out. He could have said that. He could have, the regular Hindi film villain would have said ki jao uske paise muh pe paise maar ke truck chuda ke lao, and all of that kind, which is the 60s villain would be all about the cruel zamindar or daku or whatever. But this guy said, he puts it really well, that saying I just have to pay someone off. So he was a formidable villain, and he kind of built it on. In Yado Ki Barat, his character character is very similar. Again, that very suave henchman who moves to the top of the gang. And I mean, that became Ajit's style. If you see that even in the late 70s, when he did all that Sara Shahar Mujhe Loin ke naam se
Kali
janta hai,
Charan, yes.
they are all in this suave, smooth talking villain mold.
I mean, Ajit had this style, and just before we move on from Teja, there's another line of his, which kind of goes back to what you were just mentioning about his soft manners. It's when Vijay gets out of jail and calls him and says, "Man, bahar aa gaya." कहो तो फिर से अंदर करवा दे. That has
So
a
he did
nice
not.
poetic.
Yeah. He did not lose till he really lost, because I mean, in that restaurant scene, in the phone scene, him sending his people to beat Amitabh up, he was like at it. He was like throwing literally the kitchen sink at Amitabh.
And then there is, of course, Sher Khan, one of the most memorable characters from Hindi cinema, if you will. And like I said, add to that the magnetic charisma of Pran. But I cannot imagine any other person doing Sher Khan. It's just like it's absolutely unfathomable. The way that Pran owns that character, he makes it his own. It's tremendous, and the song is legendary as well. But just his whole mannerisms and that vintage Pran eyelid squeeze that he used to have that's there. But it's just like Pran is such a great actor that he's going to own any character that's given to him, but especially Sher Khan. I mean, how good is Sher Khan, Pran as Sher Khan?
Absolutely. Actually, the other thing was that the Pran, before the release, Pran was the main draw of the film. He was the much bigger star. So when he was signed on, I mean, and he got involved in getting Amitabh also on board and all of that. In the pre-release ads, it was like Pran's face, Amitabh's face, and I think the ad line was something like the friendship between an outlaw and a man of the law, or something like that. So there is no mention of the revenge plot at all, which is the story of Zanjeer. So they actually said that it is as if it is a clash of Amitabh Bachchan and Pran, and which actually gets over in the first half an hour of the film, right? But that was built because Pran was the big. I mean, he was the one who was supposed to get the people inside the theater. So, and of course, I mean, when people see Pran doing a Pathan kind of a role, Sher Khan also has some amazing scenes and dialogues. After their famous fight, he says कि आज जिंदगी में पहली बार शेर खान की किसी शेर से टक्कर हुई है. That kind of, if there was any doubt of how badass, how much of a badass Amitabh Bachchan is, like, this Pran's dialogue seals it. And then again in a later scene, when the goons come to hire him to kill Amitabh Bachchan, and they say that we will pay you 50,000 रुपया, and he says एक इंस्पेक्टर की जान की कीमत 50,000 रुपया, मालूम होता है बहुत ईमानदार इंसान है. So these are dialogues again, which if there was anybody other than Amitabh who could carry it off, it was probably Pran Saab.
Well said, absolutely. And of course, there is also, De Silva, again, another great actor, Om Prakash. It's a small role, but boy, does he pull the strings to your heart, when he talks about losing his sons on Christmas Day and all that. What a great actor, Om Prakash was. I mean, he absolute command over this kind of emotional stuff and comedy, which is a hallmark of a great actor.
This was a very it starts very innocuously. You don't know who he is because he's just doing those quick phone calls and, letting people, letting the police know about various things. So, and then there is this sudden emotional peak, which like really tugs at your heart, and there's suddenly everything falls into place. Again, this is a typical Salim Javed feature, that there is something happening at the background, and suddenly it becomes a crescendo and going back again.
Right, right. Talking about inspirations, Dipto, for Zanjeer. So, Death Rides a Horse is a 1967 spaghetti western, written by Luciano Vincenzoni, the same guy who wrote The Good, Bad, and Ugly and For a Few Dollars More. In
Right.
Death Rides a Horse, there is a young boy who witnesses the killing of his parents while hiding from the killers. And he notices one of the killers is wearing a necklace bearing a skull, very similar to the scene from Zanjeer, where young Vijay witnesses his parents' killing at the hands of a man wearing a bracelet with a riding horse. I always found it interesting that the image that Vijay's nightmares, the image from his nightmares that haunts him, is literally that of a grim reaper-like figure riding a horse, like literally death riding a horse. And this is another great example of how Salim-Javed, like I said, often took inspiration from films, books, American films, from Marathi theater, a lot of Shakti and Mashal, all those, they took a lot from the theater, but they always made it their own by building on it, adding their own characteristic stuff to it. And in many of the cases, making it much more colorful. So this is again an example of that. So yes, it is derivative, it is inspired, but, by God, what movie did they write from that,
Yeah, absolutely. You are right in the sense that you have seen Death Rides a Horse.
Yes, it is available on Tubi, by the way, if you want to watch it.
No. So when I was writing the book on Salim-Javed, I had seen it was available on YouTube itself. I remember that scene. Actually, there are multiple, these people come in and they start killing. And it's very interesting because somebody has a tattoo, somebody has a scar, and all of that.
I think there are 4 people, right?
There are, correct. But grown up on Bollywood, I think the climax to me felt very thanda. I said, matlab, all of this happened. I mean, the revenge did not seem cathartic enough to me. So,
and that is totally different. In the sense that there are some similarities, but it's a completely different movie, and it's more like the tagline that you told me about that was on the poster. It's about a person who is an outlaw, which is Lee Van Cleef, and the boy who is more he's functioning within the law. So it's interesting, but like you said, it's in no way is it a rip off or like stuff that went on in 90s or anything like that. But definitely derivative, and Salim-Javed did this often, with many of the films. Like I said, even in Sholay, there are a lot of stuff that's kind of, inspired from Sergio Leone films, which were again written by, this guy. So it's very interesting. I always found that interesting because, that's what good writers do. And, that's why Salim-Javed are different than perhaps lesser writers, maybe I don't want to say the word lesser, but other writers, because, they will most probably just completely lift the scene or, in worst cases, totally, kind of fit a scene that doesn't even fit within the broader context of the story just because they liked it from a movie or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that in 90s, right? This. So, but what other inspirations and influences, Dipto, are there in Zanjeer?
You talked about Marathi theater. That never struck me. So
not for Zanjeer, for Shakti and Mashal. So especially, Mashal is actually pretty much kind of an adaptation of a famous play, Ashrunsi Zali Fule. So that's it's and I think Mashal was only written by Javed Akhtar, right? Mashal is not Salim.
That's correct. Yes. Right. Yeah. This was after they had split.
Right. Yeah. And Shakti had elements of another play called Raigadala Java Zagete. It's about tension between Shivaji Maharaj and his eldest son Sambhaji, and how he holds a grudge against his father. So that angle was there. But again, those two movies, I mean, are in no way kind of, Mashal is actually, I think Mashal is very similar to what the play is, because I think the only thing that's different is that in the Marathi play, the character that Dilip Kumar's character is based on is a college professor. And I think over here, Dilip Kumar is an editor, right? He runs a press or something like that. So those two are definitely there. But yeah, I mean, it's never like like I said, it's never like they have completely, just lifted those ideas or something like that. And in most of the cases, they have actually, added more color to it, if you ask me. So that's very interesting when it comes to Salim-Javed.
Yeah, actually, Javed Sahab, I think, had said in an interview, they said, we never wrote a story that hasn't come before.
Right.
He said, we took a story and then gave it whatever, a topical, our touch or whatever. So he said it in a joking manner, because apparently he once read out a script to a producer, and the producer said कि तेरी story तो अच्छी है लेकिन ये कहीं कहीं आई नहीं इसके पहले. So that typical the Bollywood obsession with only tried and tested formula work. So Javed Saab said कि okay, after that I never wrote a story that was new.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what Mahesh, but I remember used to say in the 90s, and that there is no such thing as original. I mean, it's only original until you find a source. So, but now let's talk about the legacy of the film, Deepto. I mean, it's huge. A landmark film like this, I mean, not to really distill it down, but this pretty much like ushered in the Bachchan era and the action drama era of the 70s and 80s. If for some reason Zanjeer had not been done by Bachchan, I wonder what would have happened. How would Bachchan's trajectory would have unfolded?
Yeah, he would have probably gone back to a corporate job or something like that.
God forbid.
No, but seriously, I mean, the overnight stardom that we keep talking about and we are so enamored by, Zanjeer was overnight stardom, because I have seen the trade magazines like Trade Guide, Screen, all of that, of the week of Zanjeer release, which is when it says Pran is there, and friendship between the law and the man of law and outlaw and all of that. The very next week, when Zanjeer is released, and at the end of the week one, it was declared a super hit. It was both Pran and Amitabh Bachchan equally on the cover, and it says Thespian Duo. I still remember this vividly. So saying he was on the front page of the Trade magazine, and that same issue of this magazine, in the bottom there was an announcement saying that the Ramesh Sippy, GPCP, they have announced a multi-starrer with Dharmendra, Sanjeev Kumar, and Amitabh Bachchan.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. So it is. Incidentally, Salim-Javed lobbied a lot to Bachchan to get Sholay, because they realized that if Bachchan gets Sholay, then Zanjeer would sell better. Zanjeer has a higher chance of becoming the distributors would trust that film more. So it is literally where Amitabh Bachchan started. His life started, because he was seeing Jaya Bhaduri at that point in time, but they did not have the confidence to get married or whatever. So 1 month after Zanjeer release, they got married. I think exactly a month later, they got married. So it was literally the start of Amitabh Bachchan. But I think the legacy of Zanjeer is beyond Amitabh Bachchan. Legacy of Zanjeer is 20 years of Hindi cinema after that. No other trope continued for so long and so strongly. The legacy of Zanjeer is Diwar.
Well
the
said.
legacy
Absolutely.
of Zanjeer is Trishul, Kala Patthar. Mukaddar Ka Sikandar is an angry young man. Sharabi is an angry young man. For 20 years, the angry young men of different generations kept taking revenge for their dead parents. So 10 years after Zanjeer, there was Om Puri in Ardha Satya, which is the legacy of Zanjeer. Anil Kapoor, Jackie Shroff, Mithun Chakrabarti, all of them are the legacy of Zanjeer. Arjun, which was, I call it Angry Young Man Redux. That is a Zanjeer. I mean, Zanjeer was a man of the law. This guy was an outlaw, but he's an angry young man of the 80s. Sanjay Dutt of Naam is an angry young man of the 80s. In the late 90s, by which time Shah Rukh Khan was ruling the roost, Salman, Amir Khan, all of them have become popular romantic heroes, and romance was well and truly in Bollywood. 25 years after Zanjeer, we had Satya. And I think that Satya is the legacy of Zanjeer. And I'm forgetting, I think sometime in 2005 or 6, Khaki released, Rajkumar Santoshi's Khaki.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
And very interestingly, I think in one of the interviews, I think the writer, which is Sridhar Raghavan, he said that this character of Anant, DIG Anant, is actually Vijay Khanna from Zanjeer 30 years later, because an angry young inspector like Vijay will never do well in the police force. He will be shunted from posting. He will be transferred and shunted and all of that. Eventually, he almost is about to retire as the principal of some police training school or something. So the legacy of Zanjeer, I mean, there are better angry young man films made after that, but the legacy of Zanjeer is like 30 years long.
Yes, absolutely. Interesting. You mentioned Sridhar's interview. I did watch that interview, and I had tweeted, almost a year before that, saying the exact same thing, that I think this is more of a character reboot, where Anand Srivastav, DCP, is like a character reboot of Vijay Khanna. And when Sridhar mentioned that in the interview, I was like, yes, that's what I was thinking. So that's so cool. I mean,
amazing.
It's amazing because Khaki is a solid film as it is, but when you think about it in that particular manner, that this is a character reboot, and this is essentially Anant Srivastav is 30 years down the line, Vijay Khanna 30 years down the line. It's amazing. I mean, you don't have to be a Bachchan fan or anything like that. It's just amazing because we don't get these kind of character reboots or anything like that in Hindi cinema that much.
No, you don't.
And what did you make of the new Zanjeer, Ram Charan's Zanjeer?
Actually, that was when after we talked about doing this podcast, I first thought, let me watch Zanjeer once again. Then I said, let's not. Let me see how much I remember. And then I said, why don't I watch the new Zanjeer? And I can now confirm that as a remake, it is worse than Ram Gopal Verma ki Aag was of Sholay. It is so it just murders things so badly. It's not even funny. I mean, I'm laughing now that I couldn't get to the end. So after about 1 odd hour, I said, okay, I think I've had enough. I think the new Zanjeer is definitely not the legacy of Zanjeer.
Yes. That's a poor film, for a lack of a better word. I watched it when it came out, so I haven't seen it since then. And it wasn't that great, I remember.
Yeah, I think there is a very interesting parallel between the old Zanjeer and the new Zanjeer. That I think this is a story which is well known about, because Salim-Javed, they keep repeating it, that when the posters of Zanjeer came out, their names were not written on the posters, because writers' names were never written on posters. So what they did is they got a stencil paint artist to do and painted their names on all the posters of Zanjeer. So everywhere, every poster that you saw in Bombay of Zanjeer had written by Salim-Javed written on it. When Zanjeer, the new one, was made, they made the near fatal mistake of not taking the rights from Salim-Javed. And needless to say, they sued them and demanded 6 crores for the remake rights. I do not know what is, because the exact amount was never divulged. So I do not know what was the out-of-court settlement at. But my point of view is that Salim-Javed were the highest paid writers of 2012 as well. because that is the year when it was released. Because that is like, I mean, it just exemplifies their involvement in the film. And as a matter of trivia, that one of the judges who heard the case was Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, our current Chief Justice.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a great nugget. Yes.
Yeah.
Dipto, you have, of course, written a book on Salim Javed, and you have, I believe you have also interacted with Salim Khan and
Very
Javed.
briefly.
Okay. Any interesting nuggets that during your correspondence that came up regarding Zanjeer?
Actually, this is true for many of their films, but it was probably the first time they were actually managed to do it. Salim Khan says that he quotes a Hollywood producer, I think Alexander Korda, and he says the film dialogue must be like a poor man's telegram, because it must be pithy, but must convey the message. If you read the script of Zanjeer or Diwar, for example, after that, this is it. That they use this very sharp, to the point lines, which just get the message across, and more importantly, they become repeatable after that. I mean, they reached a crescendo with Mere Paas Maa Hai, but Teja Mein Aa Gaya Hoon and Hello is the precursor of that pithiness and the impact of dialogue.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat Salim Javed when it comes to dialogue. Yeah, I think one more thing that I just wanted to touch on was I think you already mentioned that Dilip Kumar regretted not doing the film, and you mentioned it was Pyasa and Zanjeer. I believe another film that he regretted not doing.
I think it was Baiju Bawra.
Baiju Bawra, right, exactly. So
Yeah.
I think that's what I had in my notes here. Yes.
Yeah.
Baiju Bawra is another film that he regretted not. It's crazy, when you go through the list of films that these great actors have rejected or not being able to do for some reason or another. And the greatest example is, in Hollywood is Mickey Rourke, or, essentially everything that he rejected went to Tom Cruise, and we got Tom Cruise. But there are so many. I was just that day reading Shahid Kapoor. He rejected so many films. I mean, it's crazy, the ones that he couldn't do. So it's always interesting for me to see the kind of films, and I'm sure there's a long list of films that Bachchan has not been able to do.
Absolutely. There is a very interesting scene, or actually that's the theme of Luck by Chance. Again, another very favorite movie. What happens to Farhan Akhtar's character in Luck by Chance, Vikram Jai Singh? What happens to him is what happened to Amitabh Bachchan in Zanjeer, what happened to Shah Rukh Khan in Bazigar. They were not the first, not even the second, third choices. It almost came to them as desperation, because nobody else was willing to do it. And we got two. So every time an established actor lets a movie go, we get a star. I think I just love it. Love this message of Luck by Chance. And I think this is what Zanjeer is all about.
Excellent. That's a great note to end our Zanjeer discussion on. Absolutely. Shah Rukh Khan, definitely, yes. But the Luck by Chance example that you gave, yes, definitely. Now that I think about it, it's a great film. I love that film as well. Thank you so much, Dipto. This was great. I really enjoyed talking Zanjeer with you, and it's such a landmark film.
Likewise.
And I really encourage, if you haven't seen Zanjeer, do watch it. It's such a landmark film, and not just for the sake of history, or the course of Bachchan's stardom and all that, but just as a movie itself. I mean, I think you'll enjoy this movie. So definitely do watch Zanjeer. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Dipto. This was great.
Thank you.
Truly appreciate it.
It was great. Had a lovely time talking to you.
Thank you.
If you liked the episode, do consider supporting the show. Your support will help me continue creating content like this. You can find the link for supporting the show in the episode notes and on the podcast website. Also, do share this episode on Twitter, Insta, or Facebook. And do subscribe, rate, and review the pod wherever you listen to your pods. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at loveofcinemasf8. Feel free to reach out there or by email with your comments, feedback, and suggestions. You can find my email in the episode notes. That's the episode. This is Himanshu signing off. And as always, thank you for listening to the Love of Cinema podcast.